You're watching the Inside Slant on the Sports Objective Podcast. Over the next hour plus, the guys will be joined by play-by-play voices, beat writers, and other analysts from around the nation as they preview this weekend's college football action. Let us hear from you throughout the show via Facebook Live, on our YouTube channel, or on Twitter at TheSportsOBJ. Now, here are the guys.
Welcome into the Inside Slant here on the Sports Objective. We're getting ready for another great college football season. With me right now, ladies and gentlemen, Kyle from LaGrange Barber. How are you, man?
I think you mean another great college football week, but yeah, I'm doing good, Dave. How about you?
Very excited. Bubba Rosenbaum, how are you?
Doing well, guys. Hope y'all are.
Yeah, Bubba, we're very excited. A lot of great guests on tonight, and this guy's been with us for pretty much the entire time we've been on, the last 2.5 years, and great to have him on again.
Yeah, big matchup this weekend between Cincinnati and Army taking place at Nippert Stadium. Welcome in from the Bearcat Journal, Chad Brendel.
How's it going, fellas? Good to be back.
Absolutely, Chad. This game's got a little bit
Glad to have
bigger,
you back. A big matchup,
stage to it, and more national spotlight than the old Cincinnati Army Conference USA days.
Yeah, back when Army couldn't win a game.
Yeah, just a little bit more attention to this one.
Yeah, it was crazy too because it came together in like 5 minutes. Like literally, we had the athletic director released a statement on something, and then towards the end of it was the ticketing policies and everything. And towards the end of the statement, he said, we're not scheduling any additional games. And then 36 hours later, there was an announcement that they were playing Army. That's how fast Army reached out to Luke Fickell and said, we've got an open date. You've got an open date. You want to do this? And Luke Fickell is not the type to turn down a game. So he said, absolutely. And within 36 hours, they had a home and home series drawn up. And I don't think they expected Army to be a top 25 team when they came into Nippert Stadium, but they've looked very good. It's been against two questionable opponents, but Army has looked good up to this point.
Yeah, taking a look at just generally speaking what Luke Fickell has built there in Cincinnati, and just talk about the program on the whole, and just where things are headed.
Well, I mean, it's he's a Jim Tressel disciple, so it's built on defense, ball control, offensive and defensive line driven, very much. And, they're going to run the football. They're going to be aggressive defensively. They're going to run a lot of guys at you. I think that's the big thing. The biggest difference in this year's version, as opposed to, the previous first 3 years of Luke Fickell, is he's finally really started to get that depth into place. And he's kind of got a system right now of 1A and 1B guys where they rotate pretty freely on both sides of the ball, and they played almost 80 guys against Austin Peay, and that's abnormally high because it was a 48-6 game in the fourth quarter. But they're looking to play 20, 25 guys on each side of the ball every week. So the depth is the big difference. Now we get to find out, though. They lost two leaders at linebacker in Brian Young and Perry Wright. Brian Wright and Perry Young, sorry. And then Mike Warren and Josiah DeGuara. Warren on the practice squad with the Eagles. Josiah DeGuara, a pretty important piece already in his first year with the Green Bay Packers. So seeing how they replace those four guys is going to be key. But other than that, 17 returning starters on offense and defense. Those really are the only guys they lost last year.
When you look at Army, obviously Coach Monken done a great job turning that program around. And anytime you take on one of the academies, you always know they're going to run some sort of option offense, be it the triple option, wishbone, flexbone, whatever. How do you think Cincinnati always has a really good defense, always good against the run? How do you guys think? How do you think your guys match up against the option offense of Army?
Pretty good. I mean, the last time they played Navy, they held Navy they shut them out and held them to 153 yards rushing 2 years ago. So they feel pretty good about their design against the option attack. Army's is a little bit different though. It's tempo. So that is to try to stop that when they're running it at tempo and get your assignments right on the fly like that. I think is something that's probably going to take a little bit of a time period for Cincinnati's defense to adjust to, which makes it difficult because how do you stop an option team? You score early and you get out into a lead early, and that's I think going to be a challenge for Cincinnati, even though they've got a really good defense. Assignment wise, I think they'll be fine. Personnel wise, I don't see much of an issue. Luke Fickell is kind of. This is the game I'm going to be playing as I'm watching from field level. They have gone to a 3-3-5 defense over the last season or so. And he has been pretty adamant to the media this week that they might continue to play with 3 down linemen against Army, which I think I don't necessarily agree with. And I also don't necessarily believe him. Because look, if you're running a 3-3-5, what do you need 5 defensive backs on the field for against Army? So we'll see how true to that he stays, and how much of it is maybe some gamesmanship to get Army looking for some deception. But I think defensively, after they get adjusted to the speed and the physicality, I think Cincinnati's defense should be fine. It's just going to be a matter of how fast can they adjust, because, I mean, that's just difficult to even, if you've watched Army, it's difficult to even fathom how fast the ball is set and they're running another triple option play right at you, and mentally getting that, you're watching for the chop blocks, you're trying to hold your assignments. There's a lot that goes into it. Excuse me.
Somebody from Army just called me and said, "You mean cut blocks?"
Yeah, sure. You call them what you want.
Hey, Kyle, that reminds me of several years ago, I guess, probably 15 years ago now, when John Bunning was at North Carolina and they were playing Wake Forest, and Jim Grove's Demon Deacons, they cut block a lot, and John Bunning said, because it's effing dangerous.
That Navy game 2 years ago, it took out Perry Young, Cincinnati's starting weak side linebacker. Weak side linebacker. So they will definitely have their head on a swivel looking for it.
Yeah, no doubt. You gotta be prepared and watch your legs when you're taking on any of the academies. It's their equalizer, I guess, to running that option, doing those cut blocks.
They're big though. Like they say that's to like neutralize the size disadvantage.
Yeah. Everybody
on that offensive line's 285 to 305. Like that's not necessary. Like you've got the size up there to compete. So I that's not an equalizing factor. That's a decided schematical advantage.
Yeah, before we talk more about this matchup, let's kind of shift into the stands, if you will, and talk about how many fans can be in attendance, if any, and where do things stand?
The only thing you see is allowing this week and next week for South Florida, if that game happens, is each player gets 4 tickets for direct family, parents, significant others. And then the opposing team gets 100 tickets for direct family. And then the band and the cheer and dance squads are socially distanced in the stands. And that is it. They've even limited the number of photographers allowed down on the field, the number of people in the press box. So it is a very tight ship right now.
Very similar to what it is at East Carolina, only our band is not going to be there. Quite funny, and obviously the governor dictates all this kind of stuff. But this week we can have 350, family members in attendance in Greenville. Next week we can have roughly 3,500 fans in attendance.
Because in those 7 days a lot changes.
Exactly. But, back to the matchup with the with Army. What's it going to take for the Bearcats to come away with a victory tomorrow? What are your keys to victory for Cincinnati?
Here's what I always worry about, guys. I always worry, and we've done it on this podcast. I always worry when there's only one aspect of the game being mentioned, and everybody wants to talk about how Cincinnati stops Army's triple option attack, which I get. It's understandable because it's so different. You don't see it that often. Army's got a top 30 defense returning, and Cincinnati's struggles last year were offensive centric. And if you're, like I said, if you're gonna beat a triple option team, it sure does help a hell of a lot to get out to a lead and not be having to chase them. Or if you're playing even, they don't have to change their rhythm, their system, what they're doing. They're just going to keep coming at you. So I think a lot of this is going to come down to, can Cincinnati move the ball on Army's defense? And if they can successfully move the ball on Army's defense, I think you're going to be in good position to get a win here. I think this game rolls into the fourth quarter fairly close. I think it's a game Cincinnati wins by 10, 11, 12 points. Right now the line's at 13.5. I wouldn't feel great about Cincinnati and giving the points. But I do think it's a game that they should win by a touchdown and a field goal or somewhere right in that general vicinity.
Bob, did you have anything?
Yeah.
I have a request for the
Okay.
Cincinnati Bearcats if you don't have anything else.
Say that again. You said you have a request. What, Kyle?
I have a request for the Bearcats if you don't have another question first.
You can go ahead.
Okay. All right. I talked to you. Maybe it wasn't you. It was someone with Cincinnati I talked to about this on a previous.
You're cheating on me? You've got another Cincinnati guest?
Maybe. I'm not sure. I get confused.
Son of a...
But Bubba would know. Bubba would know. He keeps up with the guests better than I do. But, okay.
Chad. No, we're being totally faithful to you, Chad.
That's like
He's
that's
the
better.
only one we have on for Cincinnati.
Okay, it was Chad. It was you I asked. Okay, all right. You guys have got to please. Everybody has gone to this stupid siren from The Purge. You guys,
UC
please
started that.
Yeah, huh?
UC started that.
Yeah, but it was stupid. Go back to the Halloween music. Go back to the Halloween. The Halloween music was badass. Go back to the Halloween. I'm begging you.
I agree. Now think of it like this, Kyle. Out at UC goes to a place called Camp Higher Ground for camp, and it is literally in the middle of nowhere in Indiana. There are nothing but woods and trees around for as far as the eye can see, and they have these gigantic speakers that they use during practice, and every third down snap of every practice, they blared the Purge siren in our ears over and over again. I would wake up to nightmares of hearing that siren go off. So if they would switch back to Halloween, I would be freaking ecstatic. But unfortunately, the players are the ones that requested that, and now it is caught on across the country, and everybody's using it. And it's not as bad when it's played in the stadium, but when I hear it at practice, I have PTSD.
I loved you guys in night games.
And back in 2008, 2009, the Halloween music.
Yeah, wearing all black with Halloween music. It was so badass, and I wish you guys would go back to it. I really do.
I am not disagreeing with you at all. Unfortunately, they don't ask me my opinion on those type of things.
you tell them a random podcaster wants it back.
The guys at ECU wanted. If you guys could promise that Holton Ahlers wouldn't throw for 500 yards and 20 touchdowns like he did last year, I think I might be able to make it happen.
In that case, never mind.
It's a negotiation, Kyle. I'm trying here.
Okay, I'll agree to it. Only this time we win.
This time he throws for 30 touchdowns.
That was a hell of a game last year.
It was.
You guys got introduced with the rest of the country to Ahmad Sauce Gardner.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah,
Very disappointing outcome.
that was one you could certainly see coming from the stands because it was a matter of Holton was throwing to a guy that wasn't even supposed to be in the progression, and the guy, it was very obvious in the way the guy was running his route. I think it was C.J. Johnson who had a huge night as well, but Holton threw in the ball, and instead of working back to the football, he was moving away from it. Whereas if he was working back to the ball, then maybe at least it's an incomplete pass. So.
It's the exact same thing that Gardner did to UCF. To get a pick six against UCF. I've never seen anything like that. A kid that he was 6th on the depth chart at cornerback in camp and ended up a freshman All-American and is on a lot of first-team All-American lists now as a sophomore. Medium to low 3-star kid out of Detroit that neither of the Michigan schools even gave a sniff to. And Pro Football Focus had him as the number 2 cover corner in the country as a freshman, which you just don't ever see anybody come out of nowhere like that and make that type of impact.
Nice. Echo athlete.
Chad, we really appreciate
let you go. One more thing.
Okay. Hello?
Dave, cut out. Go ahead, Bubba.
Dave.
He cut out.
Come on.
Bubba.
Yeah.
Come on, Dave.
Chad,
get it together.
Yeah, sales service in Eastern North Carolina.
Not great, huh?
Yeah. But no, Chad, we really appreciate the visit. Should be a heck of a ball game tomorrow between the Bearcats and Army. 14th ranked Cincinnati, number 22 Army, 3:30 on ESPN. I will certainly be tuned in or DVR in this game and look forward to watching it. But before we let you go ahead and plug Bearcat Journal and tell folks where they can read your work and also listen to your podcast.
The podcast is on Spotify and Apple, the BCJ podcast. You can find us, bearcatjournal.com. We're in the 24/7 Sports Network. So just look for Cincinnati. You can find us there. You can find me on Twitter at Chad Brendel, but be warned, it's a very active Twitter feed.
All right. Sounds good.
Thanks, fellas. Appreciate
Thanks
it.
so much, Chad. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to having you back on later in the season.
We'll see you in a couple weeks, I would assume.
Chad.
Thanks, guys.
We go from one American team to another. We caught up with this guy here a couple weeks ago when Tulane was about to open their season down at USA, their new stadium, which is very nice from the looks of it on TV. We'll talk about that and much more. Right now, I'm assuming he's in Hattiesburg. Welcome in the play-by-play voice of the Tulane Green Wave, Andrew Allegretta.
Good to be here. Actually, still in New Orleans. We'll make the drive up tomorrow. It's not a far scoot up to Hattiesburg, so we'll do that tomorrow morning.
About an hour and a half.
Yeah, about an hour and a half.
Yep.
So, before we talk about tomorrow, let's just talk about what the Green Wave have done up to this point in that first game. Rallied from a 24-6 deficit on the road, and like I mentioned, at South Alabama with the excitement of that new stadium. And then last week, unfortunately, had a 24-0 lead against Navy, and Navy came back and pulled it out. So talk about what you've seen thus far from Willie Fritz Ball Club.
Yeah, story of comebacks, huh? The first one against South Alabama, I think it looked like a Tulane team that had not played yet versus South Alabama that did have a game against Southern Miss. Tulane was rusty in that first half, and then it pinned its ears back in the second half against the quarterback. They had a couple of different quarterbacks that played for the Jags, but they pinned their ears back and they got after him, and that game changed in the second half. As far as the Navy game, total reversal. Navy still looked like a team that was reeling from the BYU game. Navy still looked like a team that was transitioning to actually tackling during practice. And then I think Tulane, quite frankly, took its foot off the gas, the proverbial gas. They eased up in the second half. Navy's not going to do that. Navy needed about 100 things to go right in that second half to get the win against Tulane, and each and every single one of them went right. Tulane did not get a first down, but the very tail end of that second half, Tulane just needed to keep the offense on the field, churn some clock, couldn't do that. Navy, which typically doesn't throw the football, was chucking it around the yard. I actually think Navy finished with more passing yards than Tulane in that game. So Everything that you would expect from a game against a triple option team did not happen in the second half, and that led to a comeback victory for the midshipmen.
Yeah, like you said, great first half against Navy, great second half against South Alabama. Now they just need to do it for 4 whole quarters, and you'll get a Vic. I've watched Southern Miss play a lot of football this year, as I always do. They're kind of my adopted number 2 team. I have a lot of friends in Hattiesburg. Obviously, Southern Miss and Tulane, old rivalry from the Conference USA days. So first talk about it from that aspect, just renewing the rivalry with the Golden Eagles.
Yeah, so back-to-back seasons that Tulane will play Southern Miss. Last year played them in the bowl game, played them in the, actually think whatever side it is, the Armed Forces Bowl. Tulane beat them 30-13, another tale of 2 halves. Southern Miss actually played pretty well in that ball game down in Fort Worth. Then their starting quarterback, Jack Abraham, got hurt. And then Tulane teed off on the backup quarterback, and it was no contest in the second half whatsoever. In terms of the rivalry, this is one that has been owned by Southern Miss. It's interesting from a Tulane perspective. If you go back and look at the series history, the only times Tulane has won in this series, it tends to be the really good seasons for Tulane, whether it's 1998, the Sean King season, whether it's 2002 when Mewelde Moore was playing for Tulane. Outside of that, Southern Miss has tended to win these matchups. I think it's the 32nd all-time matchup between these two teams, and Southern Miss has 23 victories. Obviously, Southern Miss is a very proud football program. Tulane gets the invite to the Americans. Southern Miss is stuck in Conference USA, so I think that's been part of the transition in terms of talent level in the past couple of years.
Yeah, and it's Battle of the Bell, is that right?
Battle for the Bell, correct. There's a gigantic bell. It's a huge white bell. Tulane's logo is on one side. Southern Miss's logo is on the other side. It's not like something tiny. It's something that you would, stick on the Liberty Bell or something like that. It's a huge sucker.
Yeah, watching USM take on Louisiana Tech last weekend, very streaky at times. Southern Miss looked really good. At other times they struggled. Very inconsistent with their running game. That's one thing I noticed. They have the ability to run the football. It just seems to go away at times. Interim head coach, very, very one of the most. I've never seen anybody so fired up on the sideline in my life. Good Lord Almighty, that kid's gonna have a spasm out there. Talk about what you've seen from the Golden Eagles. How you think the Tulane defense with that experienced D-line matches up against Southern Miss. I do think the weak point of Southern Miss's offense may be their O-line.
Yeah, first off with Scotty Waldron, that's going to be really interesting. Walden, I believe is his name. Walden. Yeah, he looks like a young head coach to me, not just physically, but with the way he acts. And I don't mean that maliciously, but I think when you're a 30-year-old head coach, you try to prove it in certain fashions, and running up and down the sideline, acting all jacked up is one of those ways to try to prove that you're a head coach. So I'm kind of curious how that plays in the long run. That's really easy to do when you're in your first or second game. And if you suffer 3, 4, 5 consecutive losses, that sort of energy, it doesn't have staying power. So I'm kind of interesting to see how that plays out over the course of the season for their new head coach, Scotty Walden. In terms of the matchup, you nailed it. If Patrick Johnson and Cam Sample can get after Jack Abraham, who is a good quarterback, by the way. He was a Tulane commit. Actually, kind of interesting story. He was a Tulane commit under Curtis Johnson, the previous head coach. Then Willie Fritz comes and wants to run his, version of a triple option offense. That's not Jack Abraham's style. So he decommits from Tulane, goes to Louisiana Tech, leaves there, goes to a junior college, ends up in Hattiesburg. Meanwhile, his counterpart, Keon Howard, started at Southern Miss. And that didn't go very well for Keon Howard at Southern Miss. So he ends up at Tulane. So you've got two guys going against each other at the quarterback position that effectively started at the opposite school in this matchup. That should be kind of interesting to follow as a storyline. But just from a pure X's and O's standpoint, if Patrick Johnson, Cam Sample, Jeffrey Johnson, DeAndre Williams, and what is, quite frankly, one of the best defensive lines in the American Conference, if they can tee off on Jack Abraham, it's a ball game. If they can't, look out, because Tulane has struggled on the back end.
Yeah, and also you guys can run the ball pretty well. And Southern Miss has struggled stopping the run early. So I think that's another advantage you guys' favor, your run game versus their run defense.
Yeah, Tajay Spears, guys, is one of the best backs in the entire American Conference. You don't know his name just yet, but back-to-back 100-yard rushing games for the redshirt freshman. Look, they're going to get him 15 to 20 touches, maybe 15 carries, a couple of passes out of the backfield. He's a guy that's probably going to go off for about 100 yards each and every single game. He doesn't have a touchdown yet, which is somewhat strange. But in terms of electrifying athletes in this conference, Tajay Spears is one of them. And when Tulane takes on East Carolina in a couple of weeks later on this season, you guys will be circling Tajay Spears as the guy to stop offensively for the Wave.
Yeah, and apologize for the logo being over your face.
I can go over here.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Hopefully, Bubba will get that moved here in a second. He may be away from the keyboard right now. There you go. He got it moved. Good job, Bubba.
I apologize about that, Andrew.
It becomes it becomes one of those. Shoot, I can't come up with the graphic name. The little over the shoulder. I keep getting turned around. A TV news anchor. You stick the graphic right here, and you stay to this side. Right. It's fine. We adjust.
Yeah, sorry, I'd stepped away for a moment to get my son some medicine. So I figured as soon as I walked away that would happen.
Understandably so. Those are things worth doing.
Hey, Dave, when you drop, you got to plan it better.
You're no good, Dave.
Tell him to get his Burger King faster.
Hey, you know what? That is. Are you at Burger King, Dave?
No, I'm not. It's raining here, and I'm driving home. It's raining really bad.
Because Dave loves Burger King. I don't know if that's it's very interesting.
Yeah. Hey, do what you got to do.
Bubba, we pretty much broke down the whole game here. Have you got anything to add?
One of the things I'm really interested to see in this matchup is just how, obviously, Tulane coming off such a hard loss, losing that 24-point lead to Navy, and then Southern Miss having a chance to win in what 31-14 lead or 27-10. It was a 17-point lead, right, Kyle? Against La Tech. So I'm very interested to see how each of these teams responds.
I think Tulane should respond fairly well. They typically have under Coach Willie Fritz. The one thing I suppose we haven't talked about a ton is the Keon Howard situation. I know I mentioned it from a storyline perspective that it didn't go well. The Mississippi kid ends up at Southern Miss. It doesn't go well. He transfers, ends up at Tulane, sits behind Justin McMillan last year. But he's played not A-plus football so far. He's throwing 43% completion. He does not have a touchdown pass so far in 2 games. He does have 1 interception. He needs to play better. And quite frankly, guys, if he doesn't play better, don't be surprised whether it's in this football game or down the road for Tulane. They try out one of their freshmen, either Justin Ibieta or Michael Pratt, which is not where head coach Willie Fritz wants to be at this particular point in the season, making a quarterback change, going to a freshman. Keon is still the guy. He's going to start in this football game, but that's the whole deal for Tulane. If they can get the quarterback play to stabilize, and offensive coordinator Will Hall doesn't need a quarterback that's going to throw for 400 yards in a ball game. Let's see if I can do it. 400 yards in a ball game. He just needs someone that can I'm entertaining myself. He just needs someone that can go out there and get about 200 yards passing, throw a couple of touchdowns and no interceptions, and let the running game do its thing. It just needs to be a viable second option. And right now, the passing game is not a viable second option for Tulane. If it becomes one, the Wave are pretty good. If it doesn't, it's going to be a bumpy ride.
A couple things, Andrew. One of the things that Kyle and I found very interesting, because Kyle swore that it would be Central Time, but 2:30 p.m. that's actually the Eastern time of this kickoff on Stadium, which is an odd kickoff time. And then in addition to that, we have a Southern Miss fan, one of Kyle's good friends, James, chiming in, and James said, tell the Tulane guy the Southern Miss fan says hello. He said we're going to take that bell, LOL.
That's fine. Tell the Southern Miss guys to get a better television contract.
My buddy's about 6'5", 310 pounds. Go ahead.
It's fine. It's fine. It's an odd kickoff. It was slated for 6 p.m. Central, and then, with all due respect to Stadium, I think they're putting this game on a couple of the local Fox Sports channels. I have a hunch that Stadium is attempting to act like a television network, and move game times around because it's a streaming platform. You can sort of stack about 5 or 6 games at the same time. But again, if they're going to drop it on a Fox Sports New Orleans or a Fox Sports Southwest, perhaps that was part of the negotiation. But yeah, it's an awkward kickoff time to say the least.
I actually saw MSG is covering this game.
It's one of, I'm sure they're trying to grab a couple of nickels here or there and farm it out to a couple of regional sports networks, and they'll take their small slice of the pie to offset their production costs.
And I actually have Stadium, Eastern North Carolina, the Greenville market. It is 14.3, I believe.
I thought it was something you found on Facebook, and I'm not trying to be funny or anything. I seriously thought it started as something you found on Facebook.
It's a digital network, and they do stream on Facebook, but there are it's also used as one of those secondary digital channels, like your NBC affiliate has 7.2 or 7.3. Gotcha. So it's an offshoot of our Fox affiliate in Greenville.
Gotcha. That's fine. Look, we're all going to cutting the cord and streaming and all that kind of stuff. Eventually, we're not going to pay for ESPN on our cable package. We'll pay the $8 directly to ESPN to stream it through whatever package you want to do. So I understand. I'm not knocking Stadium too much, but
how you knock them? I agree with you. Conference USA's television package is awful.
I don't know how much money they get for it. It's not. Look, with all due respect to Southern Miss, I was having an interesting conversation with somebody else recently. From a Power 5 perspective, UConn is the team that certainly lost out the most in realignment. They were right there and they got squeezed, and now they're trying to find an appropriate home. From a G5 level, you could make a strong case that Southern Miss is the program that got squeezed the most because that's a proud football program. And now you're stuck in a situation where, look, the American doesn't rake it in when it comes to television contracts. It's like $8 million, which is a far cry from the SEC and the Big Ten pulling $40-50 million. But
it's so far above the rest of the other group of 5.
Yeah, it's a problem for Conference USA. It's going to be something that continues to separate. Teams like Old Dominion, they're Conference USA, right? Western Kentucky. Are they Conference USA? It's going to continue to separate some of those programs. And look, if you miss on conference realignment, it sets the whole program back. It just flat out does. And it's no fun that you have to talk about that, because we should be talking about Kansas playing Missouri, not Missouri playing, I don't know, Auburn or whatever it is. But
I agree.
It's reality. And if you don't have the dollars and cents here, you get squeezed. And it hurts you from every different angle of an athletic department.
And while we're talking about an ongoing subject that's been brought up, whenever we talk Conference USA and Sunbelt football, there used to be a huge advantage to being in Conference USA over the Sunbelt. That advantage is gone when you look at the two leagues. You could take Conference USA, you could take the Sunbelt, and you could form 2 very nice regional leagues.
Yes, you could.
And if you can't make any more money, you can save a lot of money that way. And saving money is the same as making money.
Yep. And I think Conference USA ranks as the last of the 10 FBS conferences going into this season, or perhaps last season. So yeah, they've got some work to do, which is unfortunate, again, because there's proud football programs in that league, whether it's Southern Miss or Willie Taggart coached at Western Kentucky, whatever it happens to be. But yeah, it's just these are the realities of college athletics, and I certainly don't have to tell you guys.
Yeah, Southern Miss and Marshall is who comes to mind.
Sure. Yep.
Andrew, last thing for you before we let you go, because we know you have to make that trip up to Hattiesburg tomorrow. But speaking of no fun, what about everything that's going on with the Houston Cougars? Dana Holgerson and his ball club have had 5 games impacted by the coronavirus. And actually, that's the next game on the docket for them as well as you guys. And that's on October 8th, the Thursday night.
From a Homer perspective, I'm fine with it, because that means Houston's first game is October 3rd, and Tulane will be on its 4th game. You tell me who's going to be more in football shape that Thursday night. It's going to be Tulane. It doesn't mean that Tulane wins the game, but it certainly gives Tulane a decided advantage. You feel for the Houston guys. You certainly do, because as I understand it, most of those cancellations were the result of the other team, North Texas, Baylor, certainly Memphis. It's actually interesting. I'll plug it here real quickly, guys. I do a podcast like everybody does. It's called The Current. It's on Apple. It's on Spotify. But the one advantage I have is the team physician for Tulane is Dr. Greg Stewart. He's the chair of the AAC Advisory Committee, the COVID Advisory Committee. And I talked with him, I guess, last week. And we talked specifically about canceling Memphis and Houston and how that happened and all of the inner workings of that. It's a great resource that we have at Tulane to be able to pick his brain about, the conference calls that they get on, talks that the presidents are having, all of that sort of stuff. But yeah, if you want to hear the inner workings in terms of how Houston versus Memphis did end up getting canceled and the mechanics and the timeline of the whole thing, the podcast is called The Current, and it was part of, I believe it was part of our Navy preview.
Yeah. See if you can ask him if there's any way we can do this contact trace and isolation to 7 days if you can test out after 7 rather than having to be quarantined for 14 when you're not even sick.
As you referenced prior, take that to the politicians.
CDC only makes recommendations. They're not laws.
Take them to the politicians.
Really appreciate your time, Andrew. Last thing before we let you go, you've plugged your podcast. Tell folks where if they're on the road, and in addition to listen to the podcast, where can they tune in tomorrow afternoon to hear the Tulane Southern Miss game?
I know it's crazy. Everyone's got a podcast. I suppose you sort of have to at this point, and hopefully everybody serves their particular market. I'm just trying to scratch the Tulane market and the fans that have been, scratching for a good quality football team over the past 10 years or so. At least give them something to talk about. TuneIn Radio is from a national perspective where you can go just stream it off the TuneIn Radio app, search Tulane Sports Network. That's easy. I don't believe we would be on XM with this game because we're on the road. Typically, they take the home team feed. But for our friends perhaps in Hattiesburg, our radio station down here does stretch pretty good into Mississippi. 104.1 is the FM signal down here in New Orleans. So those are our broadcast homes. Plus, you can find all of the details on TulaneGreenWave.com.
Really appreciate it, and always enjoy having you on the program, and we'll certainly have you on here in the next few weeks.
Tulane, East Carolina, what is that, November?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Just depends if we get there, guys.
That is November 7th. November 7th.
There you go. Sounds good. Tell everyone up in Greenville I said hello, and I told them I would do it. I did it last time. I'll do it again. Go get Mac McCarthy's book. It makes a fantastic stocking stuffer for Christmas, which is just around the corner, guys. Mac McCarthy's book. I told him I'd plug it. Go get it.
Hey, absolutely. We had Coach Mac on 2 or 3 weeks ago to do just that, right before it was released, and I received mine in the mail a few days ago. Can't wait to dig in and hear some of his stories from back in his days at Chattanooga or Auburn.
He's got good ones, guys. Great ones. Great ones.
Thanks so much, Andrew.
Take it easy, guys.
As we continue to move around the American, now we welcome in from the Knightline Sports Network, and we had him on a couple weeks ago as well. Welcome in Jeff Allen.
Hey, guys. Great to be here. Always a pleasure to be part of your show.
Absolutely. And I say 2 weeks ago, I guess it was actually last week. I'm living the coronavirus dog days.
They all blend together.
Prior, yeah, we all are. Prior to that Georgia Tech game, and I know you had to be very pleased with the way things went in Atlanta, taking down the Yellow Jackets 49-21.
Yeah, it was a good start for the Knights. I thought their offensive scheme suited them well for coming out of the gate that way, because if you look at, at the tempo they run, the players are veteran players. They know what to expect. And I think that gave them a good advantage in coming out to start the season that well. And big thing that I really liked was Dylan Gabriel adding a few more run options in there. I think that helps spread out the defense a little bit more. He's got to work on his sliding, though. The 2 feet first slide, he might give himself a concussion if he keeps that up. But overall, he throws for over 400 yards. The running game gets over 200 yards. Definitely a terrific start for the Knights on offense. Defensively, they struggled a little bit in the third quarter against Tech, and I think they play that bend but don't break type defense, and they get timely turnovers. I know that's an overused statement, but they tend to get big turnovers at key points in the game.
6 turnovers key. I mean, you get 6 turnovers, you're going to win most of the ball games you play.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned the speed you guys run your offense at and how that was conducive for an early season victory over Georgia Tech, particularly in the COVID era. I think it benefited your defense too in terms of forcing turnovers early on when they've seen the speed of that offense all fall camp. And now they go play Georgia Tech's offense. It's slow motion compared to that offense.
Yeah, no question about that. And I think, Georgia Tech, obviously they're rebuilding, but Jeff Sims will be a good player one day. But right now he's learning on the job, and turnovers are, definitely a bugaboo of a young quarterback.
Yeah, no doubt. Young quarterback we do not have. Holton Ahlers got some experience last year, came into his own towards the end of the season. What are you guys' thoughts on East Carolina's starting quarterback Holton Ahlers?
Yeah, he's he's not as heralded as other QBs in the conference like Dylan Gabriel and Shane Buechele and Brady White, but I think he brings a lot to the table, running and throwing the football. He's a big kid. He's very impressive. Love the receiving core you guys have with Johnson, Snead, and Prohl. This is definitely an upgraded offense that UCF is playing in their second game. So they will have to be on point, most definitely. And I tell you, I really do like Holton Ahlers' game, and just to see how he's progressed, especially at the second half of last season. And, when they played down here, UCF got off to a huge lead. But East Carolina, I think, testament to what Mike Houston's doing there. They kept grinding and kept fighting and made UCF a little uncomfortable, which is pretty rare in the bounce house.
Yeah, you referenced the second half against UCF last year, and the Pirates. That was one of there was several performances, even though they were in losses, that stuck out to Pirate fans last year. Along with the Cincinnati game, that second half against UCF was one of the moments where you really saw what the Pirates could be. The Pirates have a very young defense, very inexperienced defensive line, playing a lot of young guys on the D-line. Do not like that matchup against y'all's offense.
Yeah, that's a tall order facing the kind of offense that UCF puts out on the field. So, you got a new coordinator, you got, a lot of new faces. That's a lot to put together for the first time out on the field in 2020. Against a rocket fuel type of offense that will show no mercy and continue to, run plays every 10 seconds. So they will have their hands full. I think for East Carolina, your offense is going to have to be part of your defense and, in time of possession and trying to limit UCF's possessions.
Yeah, you talk about the Pirates, the ground game, the running back room for East Carolina is significantly improved. We brought in a couple of very talented freshmen, Keaton Mitchell out of Georgia and then Raji Harris out of South Carolina. And then you also had grad transfer Chase Hayden from Arkansas, who certainly brings a lot to the table. It'll be very interesting tomorrow to see who ends up getting the bulk of the carries or if they're pretty spread out.
Yeah, and that running game obviously would be key in trying to control the clock and keep UCF's offense off the field. And UCF's running game will be interesting to watch. Greg McCrae tweaked his ankle last week. They're saying he looks good and that he should be okay to go, but they could, in theory, sit him a week. They have great depth. I would love to have Josh Heupel's problems, because I see Otis Anderson and I always say, he needs more touches. And then I see Greg McCrae, he needs more touches. And then I see Ventavious Thompson, he needs more touches. It's like, oh, how do you figure out how to divvy up all up between those guys? It definitely is a stacked talent in the locker room there.
Yeah, last year the ground game for East Carolina certainly left a lot to be desired. Seems to be progressing in the right direction, but that remains to be seen for sure because you never know how to read an inter-squad scrimmage. But this year, when, like Kyle just referenced, you're blocking a defensive front, especially on the defensive line, that is extremely green. So you can't read too much into that success. It's not like they're blocking, Linville Joseph and Scotty Robinson and C.J. Wilson and some of those guys.
Yeah, it definitely is. Conditions are conducive for them to have success based on the talent will be on the field tomorrow. But let me ask you guys this, something of great interest in me. How do you feel like things are progressing under Mike Houston? I think he's a terrific coach, and I think, it had a big culture change to have to do there. Give me your thoughts on what he has done.
He's a winner. I think he's got the guys believing in themselves. They seem to be a lot of togetherness on this football team. So I think he's improved the morale. I think we have a lot of potential on offense. There's a lot of pieces there. Defensively, a very young defense. They changed defensive coordinator, brought in Blake Harrell, who was an FCS defense coordinator down at Kennesaw State. Interested to see how he does. Kind of, unproven. Never has coached at this level, at the FBS level. So to me, that was an interesting hire. It may work out to be a great hire. Time will tell. But I think Houston. I think Houston's getting there. I think at times you saw what we could be. Like I mentioned, second half against y'all, the Cincinnati game. The biggest thing he's done, in my opinion, is make this team more physical and get these guys to believe they can win.
Piggybacking off what Kyle said, very quickly, Dave, and then chime in with what you're going to say. But the accountability was something that was really lacking under the previous regime. So that was an elephant in the room that he had to tackle, he and the staff. In addition to that, like Kyle said, the way in which we practiced was not going to be conducive to playing physical football and championship caliber football, to say the least, and it showed. And Coach Houston, immediately after being hired, was talking about the lack of physicality. And then some reporter, I don't recall who, asked him if that was a surprise, and he said, "No, I saw it in 2017 when my James Madison team came here, and they certainly whipped us that night in the trenches." And lastly, if it's any indication, and it certainly is, the number of new players in the program this year is something like 55, and that shows what a depleted roster Mike Houston and this staff inherited. And I think it's probably we were in worse shape than I think he probably knew somewhat of what he was getting into, but I think it was probably worse, if he was being honest, than he even thought.
Yeah, I can guarantee you it was.
Yeah, for me personally, it's that same thing you guys talked about. The number Bubba, you read my mind. I was going to talk about the 54. Coach was talking about 54 new players in 1 year. We had a similar situation, Jeff, as you may remember, with basketball with Joe Dooley last year. What was it, 11 new guys on the basketball team? Well, this year we have 54 new guys in 1 year's time. And there's been basically you were talking, Jeff, about the culture. That's the biggest problem we had, is that we had guys that quit. The guys are tired of hearing me talk about that Memphis game in 2017, but those guys gave up in the first quarter. And if we'd done that, if we'd played with Montgomery, with you guys last year, it would have been over, and there would have been no comeback in the second half. So you already see obviously the fight that these guys have, and we're talking about the physicality, and these guys know there's always going to be a competition. I think that with Montgomery, once they had a depth chart, they pretty much kept that, and they didn't change. These guys felt like they were entitled, and they're finding out that it's a privilege and not a right to play for East Carolina University. And these guys, if you put a uniform on, you better be ready to be a Pirate. And I think that's what's missing before. And I'll tell you another thing, guys, that we've talked about. Not only the culture as far as the players, but the facilities at East Carolina were dismal, were awful. Every adjective you could use to be bad. And that's something that we've got to drastically improve if we're ever going to compete in the American for championships, is our facilities. And I hope our administration and fans will come together finally and start giving more to the school and the Pirate Club. And that's the only way we get better. We're going to win on we're going to win on the field in this year. If not this year, next year, but certainly we have.
And Dave cut out on us there. Poor cell service wherever he is.
Yeah. So, hey, I guess you guys are probably as excited as I am that the game, got moved to ABC. I'm sure ratings in the Carolinas and the state of Florida are going to be much better than what we would have gotten with whatever the other regional game was. I mean, it was Notre Dame and Wake Forest. So I think that you might have got some Wake Forest ratings there, but I know at least here in Orlando, the ratings are going to be big. And I think UCF drew 3 million in their time slot last week against Georgia Tech, which is a pretty good number, 4th most watched game in UCF history. And that's up there with the New Year's Six Bowl. So,
yeah, piggybacking off what you're saying, Jeff, with no one being able to attend the game outside of parents, that makes it even more the case. Obviously, Pirate Nation would be tuning in anyway, but even more so with it being our first game against number 13 UCF and nobody being able to attend, we'll be very interested to see what the ratings are for this one.
Yeah, no doubt. Jeff, what are your keys to victory for UCF?
And Jeff, I did.
Yeah, so the keys to victory, I think, basically is to keep doing what they're doing. They try to take advantage of an inexperienced defense. Trey Nixon got hurt. He was on his way to being the leading receiver until he hurt his shoulder, and no telling how long he's going to be out. Certainly, Marlon Williams picked up the slack, and Jalen Robinson did a great job, the transfer from Oklahoma. I think you're going to also see more of Otis Anderson. Getting some passes out of the backfield. He's a mismatch in the middle of the field for a lot of people. So I see that definitely happening. And, as far as, UCS defense, I think they cannot underestimate the Pirates. I think this is definitely a different offense that they will face from week 1. And they will have to tighten those chin straps a little bit harder in this particular matchup. Again, I just, I know the line is huge on this game. I hate huge lines. But I think it's going to be somewhere in around a 20 to 25 point victory.
Okay.
And we still owe you guys too, because you guys lead the all-time series 10-8. So we still owe you from the Conference USA days.
Yeah.
Hey, Jeff, I had a question.
Go ahead, Dave.
I had a question regarding this game as far as I see it as being, obviously, you're talking about the Conference USA and now with the American. I really like you guys. I like the fact to me, it's like a rivalry. We don't really have a rival as far as most of our rivals are in-state, maybe with the exception of Marshall and Southern Miss. But how does Central Florida, as far as UCF fans, the Night Nation, how do they feel about East Carolina?
I think it does stretch back to the Conference USA days. Obviously, South Florida is going to be our biggest rival. There's just no way to shake that. But
forget about UConn.
Who are they again?
Do not underestimate the conflict.
Yes, the civil conflicts, worst trophy in the history of sports. We've developed a rivalry with Cincinnati in recent years and with Memphis in recent years because we've had to play a lot of big games. But from a long-standing rivalry aspect, I say it's one that UCF fans definitely have respect for. And I would also, say too that that's also one of the road venues that our fans like to go to.
Yeah, the rivalry will come back when we knock you guys off again. That's when the rivalry will come back. As long as you guys are where you are in the world of college football and we're where we are, the rivalry's dead. When we start winning again, that's when the rivalry will come back. That's
exactly right. And, as much as I would hate to see UCF lose, the rivalries are good for the conference. And, it's be interesting to see how that plays out. I think you guys will be there sooner than later.
Jeff, have you ever come to Greenville?
Go ahead, Dave.
I was just gonna say, if Jeff, you ever come to Greenville, I think we can convert you to be a Pirate fan.
Well, you got to ply me with lots of great barbecue.
We got you. We'll do it.
But Jeff, here this week, in the last several days, you've seen the Pac-12 and also the Big Ten make the decision to play this fall, which wasn't surprising, really. But with that being the case, and and really, even before they played again, you knew it was a long shot, no matter how deserving UCF is, if they were to run the table, which is a fairly realistic possibility. So just talk about that, the chance of potentially, knocking on the door of the college football playoff.
Yeah, I think just the Big Ten coming back puts a huge damper upon that possibility. Again, I still was very skeptical, even if the Big Ten was out. I just don't see them wanting to give the opportunity to a Group of 5 team to be in the playoff, no matter who it is. I just have felt that way for a long time, and I just think that's the reality of the situation, whether we like it or not. That's pretty much the case. Now, does a team like UCF, you hate to say, it's year to year, but UCF's built a track record, and that has to count for something, because all these other Power 5 teams have track records that they get counted upon, but a Group of 5 team, it doesn't work for them. So it is a big disappointment, but definitely the Big Ten coming back has put that totally out the door, in my opinion.
And the answer to that question is sue their ass. Get some AD, conference commissioners and some school presidents with some balls. Chance it. We either get what we want or they separate. Either way, if they separate, we'll have as much chance to play for a national championship as we do now.
Yeah, I mean, because we can make all the noise we want. And, and Danny White, is the athletic director of UCF, has done a great job making noise. Yeah. But it only takes you so far until something is forced to be done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jeff, as always, we appreciate the visit. Just glancing down UCF's schedule, we'll definitely have you on periodically throughout the season. October 17th, you go to number 17 Memphis, and then November 21st. You host number 14 Cincinnati. Those are a couple that really stand out. So don't be surprised. We have you on those weeks and potentially more. But before we let you go, go ahead and plug the Knightline Sports Network and as well as your personal podcasts, and tell folks how they can listen.
Sure thing. And a matter of fact, hopefully we'll get to play Memphis if they get to play another game again. Them in Houston, and I know you got Dustin coming up, and those poor guys. I feel so bad for them. Knightline Sports Network. I host the AAC report, so I cover all the teams. You guys have been on my show numerous times, and always do a great job, and always enjoy having you guys on. And I also do my own personal podcast, Jeff Allen Sports Talk. It's more of a general sports talk, but we do talk a lot of college football as well. And you can follow me on Twitter for all that at JeffAllen_88.
All right. Appreciate
it, Jeff. Have an excellent weekend, and we'll see how it plays out tomorrow. I think at the very least, we're going to have probably a lot of points scored at Dowdy-Ficklen Stadium. I know at least by one team. Hopefully the team in purple and gold will put up a lot as well.
Well, guys, thanks again for having me on. Always appreciate it, and enjoy spending time with you.
Thanks, Jeff.
As we continue our trip around the American on this edition of the Inside Slant, and welcome in from the Scott and Holman Pawdcast. We're so used to talking to Sam Raz. We're now very excited to talk to Dustin for the first time, Dustin Rensink. Dustin, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. I know Sam was disappointed not to be able to make it, but his loss is my gain. So happy to be talking to you guys.
Dustin, are you guys suicidal there in Houston yet?
Yeah, it's been pretty rough. It is. I realize it's been an unprecedented year for everybody, but it has been pretty rough seeing just game after game get canceled. The Baylor game in particular, that's something that Sam and I both talked about. That was when we felt like we really were finally getting amped up for this year. It's been hard to kind of get excited for the year, just given everything that's going on. But once we saw Baylor on the schedule, a team that Houston hasn't faced since the breakup of the Southwest Conference days back in the 90s. So obviously really excited to get them on the schedule, and then to lose it less than 24 hours before kickoff was pretty rough. And then North Texas obviously turned around and got canceled as well. So now I think it's five different potential season openers have gotten canceled. Won't be playing until October the 8th, actual Thursday of not even this coming weekend, but the next week. So it's been rough. I'm sure at some point we'll see Houston play college football again, but right now it feels like Houston only theoretically sponsors college athletics.
Was there any talk of you guys talking getting together this weekend? They had their game with Arkansas State canceled.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything. I know that was kind of speculated at. I know that obviously both teams would love to get the game in, but as so far I haven't seen anything concrete. So I'm not sure why. It seems like it would make some sense to have both of those teams get a game in, but haven't seen anything along those lines yet.
Well, if it ain't happening, you ain't seen it yet, it ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, I think we're past the point of no return on that one.
But Dustin, you bring up that word cancellation. I love what you guys did, whether it was you or Sam or a joint effort with your name on Twitter. It says the weekly game cancellations podcast instead of the Scott and Holman podcast.
I saw that yesterday.
Yeah, that was. I'd like to take credit for that one. That one was definitely Sam. Just kind of venting the frustrations. Yeah, the other one he came up with was we always in our Twitter bio. We always have retweet RTs equals blank, and then right now it's really tired. We're just really tired, and just of doing. I think 5-6 weeks in a row now we've put out 70+ minutes episodes talking about football theoretically, and yet to actually get some concrete results.
Are you guys rescheduling any of these games? Are any of these games being made up, or has everything just been canceled at this point?
So the only thing that I've seen any talk about getting made up, the only thing that I think that really has any chance would be the Memphis game, obviously due to it being a conference game. Now there's not a shared open date, so we would have to move some things around to figure out how that was going to work. But I know Coach Holgerson said something about still expecting to get that game in somewhere or another. So other than that, though, I wouldn't expect to see any of the non-conference games get made up at this point. It seems like Coach Holgerson has kind of moved on from that. He's happy. I saw a quote today where he talked about, we're going to have still one non-conference game in. BYU is still on the schedule. And other than that, we're just going to focus on getting the conference games in.
Yeah, spoiler alert, December 5th, we are not going to be playing a conference championship game. That is going to have to be pushed back to the 19th, so some games can get made up like Houston and Memphis.
Yeah, and so that's the likely scenario at this point. So hopefully Houston will be enough in a conference race that it'll be meaningful for them and not just for Memphis to be playing those games late.
Yeah, no doubt.
And Dustin, obviously there's not but so much that Dana Holgerson can say, but just talk about the mood surrounding the program and what Coach Holgerson has been communicating to the media and so forth over the last several weeks.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're frustrated too, and it's hard to hide that. And even as the coach, you want to remain upbeat. But he's definitely, Coach Holgerson is frustrated. The team is frustrated. We've seen a lot of tweets from a lot of players, just like, does anyone want to play us? Are we when can we just want to play one game? Like anyone, just someone line up against us. And you saw Coach Holgerson after the Baylor cancellation took the kind of interesting step of speaking out openly and saying how frustrated he was that that game got canceled that late. In the process, kind of drew the ire of Baylor's athletics director. So that was kind of an interesting moment. But you saw the school kind of throw some shade intentionally at Baylor when the North Texas game got canceled, and their statement went out of their way to thank North Texas for being communicative and talking with them through the whole process. Kind of a not so subtle shot at Baylor. So it's been frustrating for everybody and the coaches and the players. Certainly, as much as you want to kind of put on that good facade of we're just working hard and ready to play whenever we're going to play. Yeah, it's frustrating.
Yeah, no doubt. And you guys open up with, is it Tulane you open with?
Tulane on October the 8th, yep.
Yeah, they're going to have quite a few games under their belt by that point, 3 or 4. And you guys will be playing your first game. Is that in Houston or New Orleans?
That one I believe is in New Orleans, I want to say. Come
on, you're supposed to know this, top of your head.
It is. No, it's in Houston. I take it back. It's in Houston. My mistake.
Okay, it's in Houston. That is I guess you guys, from one aspect, you're going to get to see a lot of film on Tulane, and you know what they'll have, and you'll have plenty of time to prepare for them. But at the same time, you wouldn't have seen any live action yet except in scrimmages. Yeah,
and you heard Coach Holgerson talking about that in his press conference before when we thought the North Texas game was still on, even just talking about a school like UNT that I think is probably is going to be less talented than Tulane this year. And even just facing them, you heard the concern in his voice. Hey, they've had 2 games to figure out who they are, to get adjustments in, to make some changes and things like that. Whereas Houston obviously hasn't gotten any, they haven't done anything to figure out who they are facing other opponents. So against a talented team that, again, in Tulane who beat Houston a year ago in dramatic fashion. So certainly it's a game that you want to win every game, but that'd be one that'll be extra nice to kind of wash the taste of last year's disappointing defeat out of our mouths. So that's gonna be a big one. And yeah, it's obviously Tulane is gonna be a little bit I don't know, maybe I'm curious to see how they play against Southern Miss this weekend after blowing that huge lead against Navy. So they might have a little bit of confidence shaken. We'll see how this next game goes, but definitely you'd always rather have the 3 games experience on your belt than the 0.
Yeah, no doubt.
Dustin, I wanted to ask you as far as the Cougs fans and as far as the Cougars are concerned with Dana Holgerson. Obviously, last year didn't go the way he wanted, and now no fault to his own, but the fans have got to be like antsy, ready to go. You guys paid him a lot of money, and he hasn't even coached this year. How are the fans still with him? Are they still happy with him, or is there any discontent there?
Yeah, I think most of the Cougar fan base is still has relative confidence in him. Obviously, I think most people kind of wrote off last year as a year 0 type situation, just given the injuries, and then the even some guys that maybe weren't necessarily season-long injuries that chose to take red shirts anyway. And then also there was just a huge number of Division I transfers that were sitting out this past year that were going to get eligible this year. And as much as U of H fans all kind of reflexively hate SMU, really what they did last year, I think, was kind of the blueprint for what Houston wanted to do. They got a lot of DFW kids that came home and got eligible that had been sitting out for a year. And then they took a huge step, and I think went from winning like 5 to 11 games from one year to the next. And that was kind of going to be the blueprint for Houston as well, having just, especially in the secondary, which was one of the biggest issues with the Cougars last year. And they just had, 4 or 5 Division I guys that looked ready to come in and play. It's just going to be a drastically remade defense. And, on top of that, Houston has, a ton of experience returning on both sides of the ball. So I think most Cougar fans were, obviously, if the things start going off the rails again this year, suddenly you start having to have some more uncomfortable conversations about how the Dana Holgerson experiment in Houston is going. But I think coming into this year, most fans were, relatively confident, ready to kind of write off the last year and say, okay, the judgment period starts now. But it's hard when the judgment periods can't start through no fault of anybody's own, that we just can't get that. We can't see what this defense looks like with all those transfers. We can't see, if the Dana Holgerson plan is coming together. So obviously that's definitely creating some antsiness. But like I said, can't really do anything about that at this point.
It's sad for you guys have had to watch De'Aaron King playing really well at Miami. How are the Coug fans taking that?
Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of people frustrated by that. I've been happy for it, honestly. Kind of the way I saw it is the silver lining I tried to see was that I thought after last year, even though both guys struggled at times, I still thought De'Aaron King deserved to lead a college football team. And I thought that Clayton Tune deserved to lead a college football team too. So obviously, 100%, I'm not going to lie, I would rather have De'Aaron King in the Houston program. He's an incredible athlete, incredible playmaker, can do some amazing things. But at the same time, it's exciting to see Clayton Tune this year as well. And I'm glad I'm able to kind of put the bitterness aside. It's been fun to watch him play for Miami, especially in the Louisville game where he just started really chucking the ball around the yard. And, his last year with Holgerson, he really just never looked comfortable throwing the ball. Just never really looked comfortable in the offense. Really, it was really strange after how good he was the year before in 2018. So to see De'Aaron King around and chucking the football around, it actually warmed my heart, even if obviously I'd rather he be doing it for my team.
And Dustin, I had a question as far as I know you're in Austin. What about Texas and Tom Herman? I know you're probably tired of seeing the burnt orange.
Yeah, I've been in Austin for 2 years, and I feel like I've seen less of the burnt orange around town than I expected when I moved up here, kind of begrudgingly. So maybe that's just due to the fact that they haven't been doing some real exciting things. So for the last couple of years, it hasn't been a lot of things to celebrate. But definitely seen more of it around town, and people seem to be pretty excited about the team. It doesn't look like they're going to have a ton of competition in the Big 12 this year outside of Oklahoma. It might be kind of a 2-team race in that conference, as poorly as seemingly everybody else in that conference has played so far. So we'll see how it goes. That is definitely I'm on the other side that I am De'Aaron King. I am openly rooting for Tom Herman and the school in Austin to fail, as is I can comfortably say about 99.8% of the Cougar fan base.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, with Tom, with that very thing with Tom Herman, I think there are a lot of people that are that fan base wants a national championship really bad, and I'll just say this: I don't know if he's that guy. I'll just be honest, but I'm outside that fan base, so I guess it really doesn't matter anyway. And I don't make the decision to hire and fire a coach.
Yeah,
are you sure, Dave?
He's got a long way to go.
You're on the payroll and off.
No, I'm not. If I were, we would be doing a lot more things with this podcast. If I got paid a lot of money with as much money as that athletic department has.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, good luck against Air this weekend, and hope to God you guys get the Tulane game in a couple weeks. You're almost scared for the Tulane players knowing they have to play you guys.
Yeah, right. It's hopefully we see the frustration all being kind of vented in a positive fashion once that game gets going, and we're definitely going to print up some Houston Cougar football undefeated through month of September 2020 T-shirts. I think
it's true.
Oh, those were classic. Those will definitely be collector's items on eBay for sure.
No doubt.
Dustin, before we let you go, how can people, obviously I know how, but how can people listen to the podcast and the Pawdcast, and how can they find out you guys on social media?
Yeah, so anywhere that you get your podcast, you should be able to search the Scott and Holman podcast, and you kind of alluded to the spelling. We got the paw, pun, and podcast, so it's PAWD podcast. Scott and Holman podcast, anywhere you get your podcasts, and we are prolific Twitter users. That's our main social media app of choice. So on Twitter, it is at SH Podcast, and again with the spelling on podcast there. So we are avid Twitter users. We tweet with pretty much I think fans of every school in the conference and a lot around the country. So we always love talking to new people on there. So be sure to give us a follow.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks for coming on with us tonight. And again, hopefully we can talk to you the next time we talk to you guys. We'll talk about a football game with Houston.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Definitely looking forward to remembering that football games are actual things.
Hey, Dustin, one thing I did want to mention very quickly. I know Sam is now in Vegas. Have you been to Vegas? If so, how many times? And tell us how things are out there. If you have been, have you had the chance to check out the new Raiders Stadium?
So I haven't been out there recently. I actually grew up in Southern California for the first about 20 years of my life. So I made several trips into Vegas. Just because it's not that far ever. It's just kind of one of those things that everybody does. I don't know why we would do family trips, even though we didn't go to shows or no one gambled. I'm not sure why we spent time in Vegas, but it's just one of those things you go to see the sights or whatever. So I have a very kind of childhood recollection of just going through and seeing the lights. And so I can't, I'm not the best guide probably for someone going there as an adult right now. You'd have to, that would be a good one to talk to about that one, but definitely looking forward to getting out there soon once traveling is a thing again. And hopefully, learn a little bit more about the city.
All right. Thanks, Dustin. Appreciate you, man, very much. And look forward to talking to you all again very soon.
All right. Take care, y'all.
Yeah. Have you guys been to Las Vegas? Either one of you?
I have not.
I'm actually made for that city and have not been out there yet. But
wow. I thought you had, Kyle.
Well, at some point I will go to Vegas, and Vegas will never be the same.
It's like the sports objective version of The Hangover. The guy we could all go there. Kyle gets lost. We got to find Kyle.
I want me the one lost, baby. I'd be home. I'd be home.
In Sin City.
I'd be home.
It is fantastic. I've been there 2 times, and it's a lot of fun. And I'm due to go back, and I've got a trip to Vegas whenever you guys want to go.
All right, Deep Pockets, Dave. Let's do it.
I seriously do.
Hey, Kyle, do you think we find Dave's mattress thrown out the window, or not out the window, but off the roof?
Right.
Hey, we'll have the suite like there at Caesars, and we'll have a tiger in there.
All right.
Jungle cat.
Yeah, one thing that we could do, guys, that I would love to do with you guys if we go is definitely to go to the sports book and gamble on some of these games. Do you want to do our picks right now?
Good segue, Dave. Very, very radio-esque of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's do it. Bubba. Let's go. Picks.
I got you. Yeah.
Chop.
We'll start things off. A game that's taking place a couple hours south of me down in Columbia, South Carolina. We talked to Bob Kessling and Jay Sunhalter, and I did yesterday afternoon while you guys are still finishing up work, and had an excellent conversation with him about the number 16 Vols taking on the Gamecocks. They are about a 3.5-point favorite. Taking a look at this one, I will definitely go with Tennessee. South Carolina's had its issues on offense. I can't imagine that the current circumstances, everything that programs are going through with the coronavirus and so forth, have made the implementation of Mike Bobo's offense any easier. So give me the Vols, and I definitely like them to cover that 3.5.
Yeah, I don't really know that the Mike Bobo doesn't run some kind of exotic offense. I don't know that it's going to be a problem getting it implemented. But I'm with you. Give me Tennessee to beat the Gamecocks, and I think they'll cover. But I do expect a competitive ball game. But give me the Vols to cover, and I get the Vic.
Definitely Tennessee all the way. I'm going to try to keep it short. I will go with the Vols.
And just for clarification, we are picking these games straight up. I know we'll mention the spread, but this is just simply a straight up pick. Game 2, sticking there in the SEC, Kentucky has really improved in recent years. Coach Stoops has done an excellent job there. And they are taking on Auburn tomorrow. And I'm double checking. I'm pretty sure that game is down on the Plains.
Yeah, it is. It's in Auburn.
High noon.
Yeah. Bubba, what's your pick?
I will go with the Auburn Tigers.
Yeah. For some reason, I almost want to say upset in this game, and there's no particular reason why. That's just a hunch, but I'm gonna take Auburn. But I expect Kentucky to give them a ball game.
Yeah, I agree, Kyle. I do think it'll be a competitive game.
It's funny you said that, Kyle. I was thinking about this morning when I heard the different matchups, and nervously, I'll pick Auburn. I think Auburn has more talent in Auburn, but like you guys said, Kentucky's been so good, and another thing is the reason why I'm nervous is the very fact that it's going to be the first game of the year. Anything can happen. So, but I will go with Auburn.
Next up in the Big 12, you have West Virginia traveling to Stillwater to take on an Oklahoma State team that did not look very good in its season opening victory against Tulsa. Tulsa had every chance to steal one in Stillwater, no pun intended, but they shot themselves in the foot several times, to say the least, and Mike Gundy and crew were able to escape, maybe more so than earn a victory. But we'll see how they play tomorrow against Neil Brown and the Mountaineers. I will in this one. I think I'm gonna go with the upset. I'm gonna take West Virginia.
Yeah, and it sounds like we're just picking the same stuff over and over again. And if we are, we probably shouldn't, based on last week's picks. We were all terrible. But I'm kind of with you. It's probably the dumb pick to take West Virginia in the upset based on what we know about the two teams. But based on what we've seen, West Virginia looks way better than Oklahoma State. Now, what you think you know versus what you've seen, maybe you should go with what you think you know, because sometimes, I know Gundy at times has held back and then had more than what he was showing. But I'm going to go by what I've seen, and I'm going to take West Virginia in the upset.
I'm the last one to go. It's like a copycat, but I thought that last week that I'll tell you guys, I thought last week that Oklahoma State would score way more than 16 points. And I know that, not knocking our friends in Tulsa, but I thought that I think it was one thing you talked about last week, Kyle, on our rewind show that we had, was the very fact of all the teams in the offensively in the Big 12 have played really bad. But I would say that West Virginia, even though their opponent is not Tulsa, they looked really dominant, and I'm going to go with West Virginia.
And that rewind show that Dave's referring to is the college football playback, right. And that will be on Sunday morning as we'll take a look back at Week 4. Moving on, in the ACC, you have Georgia Tech, who fell by 4 touchdowns, like we were discussing earlier with Jeff Allen, to the UCF Knights last weekend after knocking off FSU in the opener. They're traveling up to the Carrier Dome to take on the Orange. The Orange is 0-2 after road losses at North Carolina, 31-6, and then a similar loss, but much more competitive. And I say similar in that they still didn't do a whole lot offensively, I don't think, against Pittsburgh, but they were competitive. So they're 0-2, looking to get a victory. I will take Georgia Tech to win, but I think, I'm trying to remember, I want to say Georgia Tech's about a 7.5 or 8 point favorite in this one. I do think I would take Syracuse in the points.
But you're taking Georgia Tech to win the game.
But yes, I'm taking Georgia Tech to win the game.
Yeah, I don't know what the over/under in this game is, but it probably should be 20. This is going to be a low scoring, boring. I think it could go either way. I'm shocked that Syracuse is an 8-point dog in this game. I almost want to take Syracuse. It's in the Carrier Dome. I don't know if they're allowed any fans, but what a weird environment to play a game in with no fans in that big cavernous dome. I'm going to take Georgia Tech begrudgingly. I got a feeling I'm making the wrong pick, but I'm going to take Georgia Tech.
All right, I'll be different this time. I'll take Syracuse because I'm tired of it. Somebody's got to be right. So I'll take Syracuse. I'll take the orange.
All right.
Up next, sticking in the ACC, we're going to go to down the road to Heinz Field, where Louisville will be taking on the Pitt Panthers. Louisville's looking to bounce back from their loss to De'Aaron King and the Miami Hurricanes last weekend at Cardinal Stadium. So in this one, with the game being in Pittsburgh, even though we're dealing with what we are in terms of an atmosphere standpoint, give me Pitt to win a close one.
You know what? I'm gonna go with the Cards for a second straight week. If they don't get it done this week, I ain't picking them the rest of the year. But give me Louisville to go on the road and beat Pitt in a close ball game.
Yeah, this is one of the. I knew we were going to have this as one of our games, so I was debating. This is one that's a 50-50 game for me, guys. Okay, I'll go audible right now. I'll go Louisville. I'm trying to pick one of the two. I can make cases for both, and we're trying to wrap up the show, so I'll go Louisville.
All right.
Next up, once again in the ACC, NC State playing its second game of the year. Won a thriller last week, 45-42.
I called it. I got
over Wake Forest. Diamond Dave, Deep Pockets Dave, any of those. He got that one correct. And NC State, I know, Kyle, you were extremely impressed with Bailey Hockman and that offense. Very up-tempo, and you're big on their coordinator, Tim Beck.
Mm-hmm.
And you can talk more about that in a moment if you'd like. But them going to take on a Virginia Tech team that's battling some COVID issues, may be shorthanded at Lane Stadium. Surprisingly open as an 11-point favorite. Now it's down to 7 or 7.5. But to be honest, I never would have thought I'd do this, and I'll do it at the risk of my co-host telling me that NC State's my new favorite team. But I will say the Wolfpack pull off the mild upset tomorrow at Lane Stadium.
Yeah, Bubba, I was impressed with NC State last week, and I think NC State's got their best coaching staff overall with Tim Beck and Ruffin McNeil that they've had in a long time. Really like their offense. Very impressed with their running game. Passing game looked good too. They've played at a high level. Virginia Tech's had a lot of COVID issues. They still have guys out, that haven't been practicing. I do think Virginia Tech's got the potential to have a very good defense, put a brand new defense coordinator. I'm like you. I'm going to take NC State in the upset, and I wouldn't be surprised to see another shootout. And Virginia Tech has a habit of playing a lot of overtime games. So just a heads up on that.
Dave, very quickly before you make your pick, something else of note in this matchup, like Kyle and I talked about with the play-by-play voice of the Hokies this afternoon in an interview, which you can watch by going on to our Facebook page or our YouTube channel like you are right now. We had that 15-minute conversation with John Laaser, and one of the things that we talked about with him was the new defensive coordinator for the Hokies has been Bud Foster forever, and you have that new coordinator taking over, so that's another thing to take into consideration when you're playing through your head what you think is going to take place tomorrow in Blacksburg.
Yeah, I'm going, and I know Pirate fans probably think that I love NC State, but I'm definitely going NC State on this one. I think that NC State will win it. I think that Dave Doran last year, he has a tendency whenever he has a bad year, he's going to bounce back. And so I think it's a question of, I know they'll go to a bowl. It's a question of which bowl they'll go to. And I think they were dealing with, I know people use it as an excuse a lot, but they did have a lot of injuries last year. And I think that they will go on the road and beat the Hokies. I really do.
Yeah, and I don't think Tim Beck's going to be there long.
That's another show for sure. He definitely shows a lot of promise as a coordinator.
Next up, we are going to the American, and we talked to Andrew Allegretta, second up tonight, and he's going to be headed up to Hattiesburg tomorrow as the Green Wave are doing battle with the Golden Eagles. USM 0-2, looked pretty good though at times against La Tech, but they were unable to hold a 17-point lead in the second half, and so. I think Tulane will do a pretty good job of bouncing back in this one. I do think it will be a competitive game, but give me the Green Wave.
Man, I want to take Southern Miss. I really do. I look at the matchup in this, and I like Tulane's D-line against Southern Miss's O-line. I like Tulane's ability to run the football if Southern Miss's run defense has struggled. Tulane's quarterback has struggled mightily early.
Which makes what you're saying about their ability to potentially run the football against Southern Miss all the more important.
Stack the box, USM. Stack the box and make him beat you throwing the ball. I'm going to take the Green Wave, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's the wrong pick.
I'm going to surprise everybody. I'm going Southern Miss. I think that I like like we talked about the energy of the coach. It's at Southern Miss. I like what Willie Fritz has been doing at Tulane. I don't know. I just have one of those feelings that normally I would go with Tulane this week, guys. I just have a funny feeling about Southern Miss. I just find it hard that they'll be, even though I know they've done it before, winless season. I just find it hard to believe that they'll lose another week.
Yeah, like you're saying, Dave, Coach Walden there at Southern Miss, he's very entertaining to watch on the sidelines, and will be interesting to see how the Golden Eagles fare throughout the remainder of the season and whether they can or whether he can have the interim tag removed. But moving on, next up, Liberty went on the road and got a big win at Western Kentucky. So this week they're welcoming Butch Davis and FIU to Williams Stadium there in Lynchburg. So in this one, I think it'll be another competitive contest, but give me the Flames.
Yeah, I know nothing about FIU. I don't even know if they played yet this year. I know Butch Davis had them playing pretty good football at times last year. They upset Miami. I'm going to have to take Liberty because I've watched them play, and I have not seen anything of FIU. FIU may win the football game. They may be a good team. Butch Davis certainly is a good recruiter. But just because I haven't seen FIU, I have to take Liberty by default.
Yeah, for me, I'm going definitely. I feel like a copycat with you, Kyle. I'm just not. I don't like you said about Butch Davis. I like Liberty, and I'm gonna go with the Flames. I think that people may think I'm crazy, but if we hadn't gotten Mike Houston, I would have loved to have gotten Hugh Freeze. I think is a great coach, and I think he would be a heck of a recruiter and win a lot of games for East Carolina. Obviously, we don't have to worry about that. We have a great coach we have, but like Hugh Freeze, and I'll go with the Flame.
I don't think anybody's going to think you're crazy. I think most people think Hugh Freeze is a great coach.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying with the off the field issues. I don't. I mean, but otherwise, yeah. I mean, his recruiting is tremendous, and I think that you want to look at. I know they have a lot of private money. You want to look at Liberty. I mean, they're not. If you look at basketball, different sports, they're putting. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's almost like on their own country how much money as far as infrastructure and everything, the facilities. And I know they have. I know it's a private school, and I get all that, but man, they've got a lot of money.
Those evangelical Christians tend to be pretty good at taking people's money, Dave.
So the pass the plate, right? But But anyway,
Heel!
I heard what you said.
Heel, Dave! Heel!
Yeah, Bubba, what do you think?
I picked the Flames, but next up we have Iowa State. The Cyclones 2 weeks ago were taken down in their only game up to this point, 31-14 by Louisiana. And so tomorrow they're taking on the TCU Horned Frogs. This game is in Fort Worth. This will be TCU's first ball game, as they had a game with SMU postponed due to positive tests and contact tracing and all the COVID-19 impact. But I think Iowa State will look more like Iowa State was expected to look offensively, but with it being in Fort Worth, even though it's their first game, give me the Horned Frogs. I think the Horned Frogs will maybe find a way to take down the Cyclones and Brock Purdy.
What's the line in that game, Bubba?
Just one moment. It's just extremely close. It is Iowa State by 2.5.
Man, I don't know. That one's tough. That's real tough. Was not impressed with Iowa State against Louisiana at all. They have some potential to be really good. TCU, always a good physical football team under Gary Patterson. I'm going to take Iowa State, I think. I'll say they bounce back and win a close one against the Horned Frogs.
Yeah, I think they played bad, but I agree, Cal. They're due, and they're gonna win tomorrow.
And the final game that we're picking this week, we're back to the ACC, and this is one that we threw in there late because I'm trying to remember what was it the Georgia State Charlotte game that we had in the contest, or not contest, but in the pick'em, and obviously that game was one of I guess 6 or 7 games this week that was either canceled or postponed. But the UVA Duke game, Duke's traveling up to Charlottesville. Duke has not looked particularly good. They looked okay in the opener up at Notre Dame against a very talented Notre Dame team. But last week, we don't know yet exactly how good Boston College is. First-year coach, and they went into Durham and won 26-6. Give me I like what Bronco Mendenhall has going on in Charlottesville. Give me the Cavs.
Who's first game? They're going to struggle early, but they'll get it going by the fourth quarter. Give me Virginia in a close game just because they haven't played yet. Otherwise, I think they beat Duke handily. But give me the Cavs in a close game.
Well, I don't see Duke going 0-3. I know it's on the road. I like the Bryce kid from Clemson to transfer. I don't know why they didn't play good against Boston College.
Dave's favorite team.
I really feel like that they. I don't think Virginia is. They're a good team, but I don't think it's playing Clemson. So I'm gonna go with the Blue Devils, and I'm gonna go with them on a close game in Charlottesville.
All right.
And if you guys would like to carry on for a moment, I'm trying to communicate with our last guest, Andrew Spivey of Gator Country, seeing if he's going to be able to join us or not.
Yeah, and some interesting news as Bubba's trying to connect us with our last guest. A couple interesting things to talk about. One, Georgia State, East Carolina. Georgia State having to cancel their game with Charlotte. Will the Pirates and the Panthers be able to play next weekend? Hopefully that decision will be made sooner rather than later. And the reason I say that is because the Thundering Herd is open next weekend. And Marshall open next weekend. If we can't play Georgia State and the announcement is made, I would say by Monday. I don't know for a fact if that's too late. I know when Memphis canceled with UTSA, they scheduled Middle Tennessee for tonight. The decision was made on Saturday, and it was scheduled for tonight. So if Georgia State is sure they're not going to be able to play us next weekend, we need to get Marshall on the line and see if we can get it worked out where the Herd will be in Greenville next weekend. If Georgia State thinks that they're going to be able to go, I think it's going to depend on contact tracing and how comfortable they feel, Dave. If they have 10 or 12 guys in quarantine, but it's spread out throughout the team, and they think they want to go ahead and play, then we can do it. if they don't want to or don't feel they have a chance to be competitive and won't play, we need to make that call early so we can try to get Marshall in Greenville. And I'll segue from that. And if you want to comment on that, Dave, if not, I'll segue from that. You have anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, I think you were spot on. It was funny that I read your mind. I had remembered that Marshall, that thing, and then it just dawned on me. And then it was funny. We had a group text today, and both Bubba and I were like, that very thing. So I thought that was funny. Yeah, I mean, Marshall, that's an important game. It's not like it's just any random game. And if, Marshall's a really good football team. So I know that we're December 5th is a date that may be pushed back, like we talked about with the conference championships. But what if it's not? And that would be a shame if we don't play that game on the 50th anniversary of the plane crash. And the good news is John Gilbert and Mike Hamrick both want to play that game. So I have a feeling that if there was any way possible they could make it work next week, then they would definitely do it.
Yeah, I got a feeling that he was on the phone with Gilbert as soon as he heard that Georgia State canceled their game with Charlotte. And look, hey, we may be playing Georgia State next weekend, and if that's the case, then great. I hope it is, to be honest with you. But if not, then I hope it's canceled in enough time that maybe we can get Marshall in here if it's feasible. Logistically, we'd have to have staff in the stands and all that, et cetera. Hopefully, a contingency plan can be put in place tomorrow just in case we don't play Georgia State. But interestingly enough, Georgia Southern played a game against Campbell with 32 players out, or 33, whatever it was. And lo and behold, the Camels are having the same thing happen to them again. I guess when you see Campbell on your schedule, you think you can beat them with half a team. The Appalachian State Mountaineers announced on Twitter this afternoon that they have rough 18 to 21 players out due to COVID and contact tracing, and they're going to go ahead with their game against Campbell this weekend. So another shot for the Camels to knock out a Sunbelt team with a limited roster. So very interested that App State decided to go ahead with the game. Georgia Southern made that decision, and with even more players out, and barely beat Campbell. And you would think Appalachian State would be able to do the same, but it does make it more interesting. And it's also interesting that these teams are choosing to play with multiple players out based on the quality of the opponent.
No question about it. And that game, I'll never forget watching that game. That was one of the best games on that Saturday a couple weeks ago. Was it 27-26?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Something like that, I believe. And I was just like, Mike Minard has done a great job with that program. But, I didn't know I didn't know the backstory of those players being out.
33.
So I was like, well, yeah, I was like, wow, no offense to Campbell fans, but I was like, wow, Georgia Southern with the program they have, if they're playing Campbell like this, they're really struggling. I had no idea about the players being out. So that is a big deal.
Yeah, and now App State's going to do the same thing, around 20 players out, and the Camels roll into the Rock this weekend. It'll be interesting to see. I fully expect App to still win that ball game, but it'll be interesting to see if Campbell's able to be competitive with them because of being down a few players. I guess we're still waiting on Bubba to see if
Yes, I'm still waiting on a response. In the meantime, in addition to those issues that you already talked about, what are some other games this weekend that stand out? Obviously, this is a 4-touchdown spread, but last year you had Oklahoma and Lincoln Riley go into Manhattan and come up short against the Wildcats. K-State obviously lost to Arkansas State in its only game up to this point. So you have number 3 Oklahoma hosting them tomorrow at noon, and that one is televised on Fox.
Yeah, I think Oklahoma will take care of business. There's a few interesting ones in the SEC, like Florida and Ole Miss. I guess Alabama. Who do they open with? Missouri. Who does Bama open with?
Yes, Alabama plays Missouri.
Yeah,
and that game is in Columbia, and that one's a 7:00 kickoff on ESPN.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see the SEC get into action tomorrow and see what the supposed best conference in football looks like. LSU, Ole Miss, little baptism under fire there for Lane Kiffin, taking on Yang. And obviously, Coach Ogeron does not like Ole Miss.
Well, you know what? And be careful with.
They are. Or is it Mississippi State is playing LSU, Bubba? Yeah, Ole Miss is playing Florida. It's Mississippi State and LSU. You just
Florida Gators.
Florida is going to Oxford, and then Mississippi State is going down to take on LSU, as you say.
Mike Leach, baptism under fire, taking on Coach Ed Ogeron. Two interesting personalities in that ball game.
And you created a nice segue for me, Kyle, because that was going to be the next game that I brought up. I'm really looking forward to seeing that one, 3:30. I believe it's on CBS. And really interested to see how KJ Costello and company operate that air raid offense, particularly under these circumstances against a team the caliber of LSU. But this is a new year. Will be, I think the spread's about 16 or 16 and a half. It opened at 18 and a half. So the betting public is expecting the Bulldogs to go down there and be at least semi-competitive.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I think there's going to be some growing pains with that air raid offense in Starkville, Mississippi State. I like LSU to take care of business and win convincingly.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, the LSU game. I mean, I know that one thing is for sure. It's like everybody's making like such a big, and it is a big deal about the depleted roster. You know, like a lot of the guys, but I think Coach O is on to something there, and I think that I think there's a lot of talking heads that are making too much of a big deal out of that, like losing. There's a lot of great players still on that team, and I'm not saying they're going to win the national championship like last year, but it's not like they're a god awful team this year. It's not like from one extreme to the other.
No, and I don't. I mean, I haven't listened to a lot of national pundits here lately, but if they're thinking that's really surprising to me. But we'll find out Saturday.
Yeah, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong because we haven't even seen them play a game. They haven't even played it down this year. But I just find it hard to believe the LSU is going to go from the top of the mountain to being like, what do you say, hot garbage, Kyle?
Hot garbage.
Another very intriguing matchup, and I say intriguing not because it's going to be a upset by any means. And when I say this game, you'll understand why I say that. But Sam Pittman, new head coach at Arkansas, he came from Georgia, and they are hosting the fourth-ranked Georgia Bulldogs tomorrow in Fayetteville, and that one's it's at 4 o'clock, and it's the SEC Network telecast from Razorback Stadium.
Yeah, Georgia big, obviously, but you got somebody off of Coach Clowney's staff, so that'll be interesting to see how that plays out at Arkansas. Arkansas seems to change coaches about like I change underwear.
Is that once a week?
You said someone off of whose staff?
Georgia's head coach.
Clowney.
I was just messing with you. Yeah, Kirby Smart.
No, Davey, it's not that kid that played in South Carolina.
Yeah. I missed you, Davey and Clowney getting the Georgia job.
He's still playing. What's funny is somehow. Kyle, what's funny is somehow he's playing in the league still and coaching at Georgia at the same time. That's pretty.
Why? I'm just confused. Coach Smart and
yeah.
What?
Jessica, has he taken his drugs today? His meds?
Evidently, I had a stroke. Wow. That doesn't make any sense.
Oh my goodness. Good times, man. You guys are definitely the best.
As I'm looking at some of the other action tomorrow, here's a score from tonight, and Bubba Grant was chiming in with this earlier, but now it is halftime at the Alamo Dome as UTSA is looking to move to 3-0 against 0-2 Middle Tennessee, and at halftime the Roadrunners lead 17-10.
Meet, baby, meet.
I have breaking news right now. James says he's no longer your friend because you picked Tulane.
Oh well, tell tell James that's all right. Shannon's still my friend.
He was asking who did Kyle pick, Tulane versus USM on Facebook.
Yeah, I took Tulane. So I did say that's probably going to end up being the wrong.
Don't forget, and who picked Southern Miss?
You picked USM, Dave. I do think Southern Miss has a very good chance to win the game. I just went with Tulane, basing it on their running game and Tulane's defensive line.
Don't forget that, James. I picked Southern Miss.
Earlier, guys, we were talking to Dustin, with him being in Austin, about the Longhorns and Tom Herman and just what we can expect out of them. Obviously, they played UTEP, which doesn't give us any indication of anything. But tomorrow they are traveling to Lubbock. They are a 17.5-point favorite against the Red Raiders, and the over/under in that one is 70.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. I expect a high-scoring game. I like Texas to take care of business, but Texas Tech's always going to put up some points, no matter who the head coach is.
And this one wasn't in our pick'em, but what do you think, Kyle? As far as our first guest of the night was Chad Brendel with Cincinnati and the Bearcat Journal, the 14th ranked Bearcats hosting the 22nd ranked Army Black Knights tomorrow at 3:30 at Nippert Stadium. So how do you see this one unfolding? I think Cincinnati will win, but if I was a betting man, I like Army in the 13.5. That would be pretty tempting.
I actually like Cincinnati to cover. I think they're going to win by a couple touchdowns. I could be wrong on that, but I think Army's a good football team. I just think Cincinnati matches up real well with them.
Yeah, I go all the way with Cincinnati. I love Luke Fickell. No offense to Coach Monken. I think he's done an amazing job at West Point. But the recruiting that's one thing I was going to ask and couldn't with Chad Brendel. The recruiting for Luke Fickell has been great. And I don't know if you guys remember, Mike Houston has a lot of respect for Luke Fickell and what he's done and how he built the program. If you remember I think it was the post game after the Cincinnati game last year, and he really likes Coach Fickell and what he's done. So I'm going all the way with Cincinnati.
Yeah, he said that's the blueprint, and since he's going to take care of business, but it should be a good game. Guys, do we have our last guest? Or are we going to wrap this thing up?
I was going to say,
go ahead, Dave.
Bubba. No, I was just going to ask you that very thing. Bubba, is any final thoughts to wrap it up and get ready for another exciting day of college football tomorrow?
Yeah, bear with me just one moment. But yeah, if we don't hear something here in the next minute or two, we will go ahead and definitely wrap this up and call it a night and get ready for the big day that awaits us tomorrow.
Hey, Kyle, what about as far as the games? What games have you intrigued to watch tomorrow?
Well, I'm going to watch the East Carolina game.
Well, you know that one. I know, but beyond that one, I know that's obvious.
Tennessee, South Carolina intrigues me. Tulane, Southern Miss. I'll be anxious to see how LSU does look against Mississippi State. Louisville versus Pitt is intriguing to me. I think that'll be a really close ball game. Iowa State, TCU, I think has a chance to be a really good ball game. So those are the ones that come to mind that I think will be a lot of fun to watch.
That Florida game is going to be Florida, Mississippi, Ole Miss.
Florida big.
And the other one that I'll watch, but I know the outcome. But we were talking about De'Aaron King. I really want to watch him against Florida State because I do feel bad for the Seminole fans. I mean, they don't even have their coach. Mike Norvell won't be there.
That's a rivalry game. Just keep that in mind. No matter what, Florida State does have some talent, and that's a rivalry game. So, you look at it on paper and you think Miami should whip their ass, and they should. But whenever you're at a rivalry game, you never know.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is the very fact of the thing. And by the way, Kyle, James puts up there a great point. Mike Leach brings a true air raid to the SEC.
Yep.
And James, you know what's great about that? I'm glad you said that, James, because I'm wondering. I want to ask you this, Kyle, being the football man that you are. I'm wondering with the fact that Mike Leach is in the SEC, if he starts kicking some major booty, which I think eventually he will. Do you see other coaches or other programs when they lose a coach get a guy like Mike Leach to come in and do an air raid? Because the reason I bring that up is if they start scoring a whole bunch of points, and like they will, they probably won't have a great defense, but if they put a video game 40, 50, 60 points on a scoreboard, eventually you have to adjust to that, right?
Well, I guess it'll be depending on how much success he has in it. I think he'll put up a lot of points, but will that equal a lot of wins? You know, it took many years at Texas Tech and a few years at Washington State for him to go from just putting up a lot of points and pulling off upsets and getting them to bowl games to competing for the Big 12 title and then the Pac-12 title in Washington State. So if Mississippi State fans are patient with him,
right,
I think they can get there. To answer your question, do I think other SEC schools will look to going after an air raid type coach? Possibly. It's monkey see, monkey do. Maybe somebody like Vanderbilt in particular that could use a gimmick. And I'm not saying a gimmick in a bad way.
Yeah.
You think the air raid offense is great. I loved it when we ran it here, even though Lincoln doesn't run a true air raid, even though people thinks he does. But yeah, it's possible. Again, particularly you look at somebody like Vandy, if they see Mississippi State lighting up the scoreboard and winning some games, you definitely can see somebody else do it.
And Lincoln Riley did okay, don't you think?
Yeah, but again, I don't think Lincoln runs.
No, I know that. I know what you're saying. It's not exactly that, but
pretty close. He runs the ball a lot more than Mike Leach.
Yeah, and I liked. Hey, I'll take Lincoln Riley back any day of the week. Yeah. I know he's in Oklahoma. There's no way he's going to come to East Carolina, but if he could, I would give him the head coach.
Other than Mike Houston, yeah, but Lincoln Riley's pretty badass.
Yeah, no, definitely not upset with Mike Houston. I'll tell you what, I'm tickled to death. Oh, one final thing I wanted to say. I didn't say in the Jeff Allen interview because I was transitioning to the laptop. That I want to mention something that you brought up last week that's very important to Pirate fans as we're on the eve of our first game. Hypothetically, so don't understand. I think we have a chance to pull off the upset tomorrow. But if for some reason things don't go well tomorrow, don't be anti-Mike Houston. That's the tough. Tomorrow's game, in my opinion, is the toughest game we have the whole season. Unfortunately, it's not like game 4. It's game number 1 because of COVID. And I'm not making excuses for Mike Houston, but knowing our fan base, I'm praying to God that they won't turn their backs on the best thing that's happened to our program in a long time.
Yeah, people need to be realistic with their expectations. And if things get out of hand tomorrow, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. Now, if offense struggles, I'll be a little concerned. But particularly on the defensive side of the ball, if things get out of hand, try to keep your bearings and move on to the next game, be it that Georgia State or Marshall or South Florida. Just move on.
Yeah, I wanted to make that point earlier and didn't just realize I didn't. So we have a lot of things that we're looking to, and certainly, guys, hopefully that we can be talking about a bowl game, and maybe next month we'll see where they'll approve. I think it's next month, right, that they approve that every team can go to a bowl game potentially.
Proposed to the NCAA, and it's coming up for approval in October. That regardless of there'll be no minimal win total. I don't know if you're going to have a winning record or a 500 record. That wasn't real clear, but no minimum total. Not sure exactly what that means. That'll all be flushed out when the NCAA makes that decision in October.
All right. Bubba, any dice on our next
No,
guest?
It's looking as though it's a no-go. I was trying to see if Sutton Young could join us very quickly. I know he was right outside of Dowdy Ficklin. I know UCF had arrived there at the stadium with their equipment team. So I was going to see if Sutton could join us very, very briefly. But we really appreciate everything he's doing for us in terms of some graphics, and then also his reports there on campus, just like the segment is named when we put those 2 to 4 minute or so clips that he has right outside of Dowdy Ficklin. I really appreciate his hard work.
Absolutely.
Yes, we do. He's been fantastic.
10 o'clock. It's 2 hours. It's enough for me. I'm gone. Y'all keep talking if you want to.
No, we're going to wrap it up. Thanks to all our guests here on the Inside Slant. And obviously, you can watch these shows archived on Facebook, on our YouTube channel, and obviously on our podcast, anywhere that you listen to your favorite podcast. Thank you so much for watching and listening to the Inside Slant right here on the Sports Objective. Good night. And as always, go Pirates.